Indeed. Well, thank you everyone for being here and talking about advocacy as it relates to all of our work and the things that we all do day in, day out. So we're gonna get started in just a moment. I always give folks just a couple of extra minutes to join right around that lunchtime hour. So hang tight here for a moment. We'll get started. I want to be mindful of everybody's time. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Will Cote. I am Deputy Director at Parks and Trails in New York. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar titled From the Budget Finish Line to Your Local Park, New Advocacy Workshop. This is something that Shane and I decided to put together as a follow-up to Park and Public Lands Advocacy Day. It's also a topic that we hear from a lot of our partners, coalition members, friends group members, about wanting to know a little bit more about, giving you some tools that you all can utilize yourselves, as opposed to just kind of following the lead that PTNY leads for you all on our advocacy workshop more broadly. We're going to just jump right in. Shayna is going to be doing the PowerPoint for you all so you can follow along. And she's going to be supporting some question and answers as we get a little bit further along. So welcome again. Today we are going to cover advocacy. Obviously, some best practices there as far as we are concerned. If you have been supporting PTNY and our advocacy work in the past, we typically focus on the New York State budget, particularly this year as well. If you've been following the news from today, there looks to be a budget deal. And some of our sources indicated we will have a budget on May 11th. So we shall see how that goes. But if you've been receiving our emails, you'll get the update about that and our advocacy asks and where those things landed. But today we're going to talk about how advocacy really is a year-round process. It is not a one-day event. It is not just a lobby day in Albany. We're going to talk a bit about how to engage legislators or decision makers effectively. How to engage them. I think this timing of legislative engagement is really important, and it is a little bit steeped in mystery. So we're going to demystify that there and talk a bit about and more specifics about those timing and cadence of engagement, and also just how to turn your meetings into results. And I think it's important to say two things. One is advocacy and legislative engagement is not a sprint. It is absolutely a marathon. And like any marathon, there are ups and downs, and the key is to be consistent. So we're going to talk about that. The other thing is you don't need to be a professional advocate to be effective. And I think that is a misconception. There are certainly an elite class of lobbyists that exist, right? We hear about them in the news, either in Washington or in Albany from time to time, but you do not have to be a professional lobbyist to be an advocate. You just need a clear process. And I hope that that's what we're going to lay out for you today. So just as a refresher about Parks and Trails New York, PTNY, and who we are. So our mission is that we believe public lands are for all. We champion and protect our parks and greenways by advocating for resources, connecting communities, strengthening a network of stewards, and sharing the awe of nature. And we do this in a number of ways, but collaboration and developing trust with our partners is critical. And that is why Shane and I and the rest of our team do workshops and webinars just like this. And so it's important for us to continue to be accessible to you all. Beyond that, what we do is advocacy and training. We grow trails and make them safer. We are public land stewards in the broadest sense. And of course, we support grassroots groups like the Friends Groups of Parks, Historic Sites, and Public Lands. We do a lot of coalition building, local and statewide engagement. And certainly, I hope that some of you have attended or are familiar with what used to be Park Advocacy Day and is now Park and Public Lands Advocacy Day. And we also are part of the New York Outdoor Recreation's Advocacy Working Group. So we're going to use a couple of examples from our work today. I'm going to try to use them sparingly because I don't want you to necessarily take what we do in our examples as the gospel. It's simply as a sort of crucible for you all to take your work further. And really what we want to do today is give you tools that you can use in your own community. Again, this could be local, this could be county, and this could be regional. So the big idea here, as I said, is advocacy is a process. It is not just one meeting, it is not just Advocacy Day, and it is certainly not just in Albany. The framework that we want to build for you all is that it is crucial to build relationships. It is crucial to make an ask and to have that ask be very clear and concise and target driven. And to do follow-ups. And Shane and I were joking during the development of this that follow-ups need to be plural because this is an endless process of engagement, re-engagement, and following up with various elected officials or their staff, and we're going to talk a bit more about that as well. You always want to be reinforcing your asks, not only with repeated engagements, as I've just mentioned, but also with content, communications, invitations to events, consistently reinforcing who you are and what you want to see changed, improved, addressed, or moved forward. Things do move glacially, but sometimes the glacier cleaves and there's a lot of movement all at once, and that's what you're going to be prepared for. So you'll need to repeat this again and again and again. And as we've said from the beginning, Park and Public Lands or your Advocacy Day is not the starting line. In fact, it's the opposite. It is the finish line. And so what we're going to do today is lay out that process for you. Now, before Shayna moves on, I will say, just as a little bit of a personal note, I've been doing advocacy for Parks and Trails in New York for 6 years. It took me 3 or even 4 years until I was no longer sort of a new face in the environmental community and key legislators and their staff knew me. Once we got to that 4 or 5 year mark, I finally became sort of a resource where a legislator and their staff could call me, ask me questions, get my opinion, ask for supporting data or a letter of support, those types of things. And it wasn't even until this year in January that I feel like I sort of arrived in the sense that I'd finally become a consistent enough voice that I was able to sort of achieve some important wins. And so as a joke, sort of for me, I always do legislative testimony around the budget. And this year I was in the first group to testify, which is very exciting. It's sort of a VIP slot here in Albany. So I got to testify at 5 o'clock as opposed to 10 o'clock at night. And so that's how you know this process of constant reinforcing and repeating engagement works. So that is my little story. But we can talk about the advocacy cycle more specifically and move on from here. So the advocacy cycle, how this works is really by building relationships. And those relationships should be forged in the summer and fall. Think July, August, and very early September. All right. This is your opportunity to know the key players and know who you need to be reaching for, who you need to ultimately access, right? Is this your local, is this your mayor? Is this your town board? Is this your county supervisor or county legislature? Is it your state elected official? Is it the governor's office? Is it your federal representative, right? You will know based on your issue who that person or persons are. We here at PTNY focus our engagement on key leaders in the legislature, and we do that identification by looking at key committees. And this is something that you all can do. Most levels of government have a committee structure, and so look at that. Is it a Parks and Rec committee? Is it a planning committee? Who are those folks you need to access, right? So for us, again, here at PTNY, we look at the parks committees, we look at the environmental conservation committees, and we always look at the budget committees, right? That might be Ways and Means or the finance committees, right? The folks that hold the purse strings. Because ultimately, if you're looking for funding as your ultimate goal, you'll need to ingratiate yourselves with those folks as well and help to have them see that same vision, right? Occasionally, you could look at a transportation or a city committee, an education committee, right? Education might be helpful for those of you that rely on Connect Kids or want to make more of an impact with that program, as an example. Next thing besides building the relationship over summer and very early fall, I mean, I think early September until the 21st is still technically summer, but once you get into that mid-fall range, you're wanting to be making your ask, right? Mid-September through the end of the October is that time to be engaging with legislators or elected officials, making your pitch, multiple times, which we'll talk a little bit more about. But I say early or mid-September, this fall period, because by November, by the time you get to November 1st, certainly by the 15th of November, the budget, for example, is mostly going to be set in stone. You're coming too late to the game to be making those asks. So particularly as this relates to the budget, right? Just like in your own organizations, your own life experience, right? You're probably building your budget out many months before you bring it to your board for approval. It's the same with the government, right? Except there's even more hands in the pot. So make sure that you're keeping that in mind, that really September and October is that time. And you'll want to make sure that you're using the proper channels. During session, right? Session starts in January. These are two important things here. First is showing up. Right, it's important to show up, to be seen physically in person. Doing advocacy days is a great way to do that, particularly at the state level. And Parks and Public Lands Advocacy Day is our advocacy day with OSI, but there are many other advocacy days. So if there are other events that speak to you, your mission, your goals, your organization, absolutely reach out to them and consider taking advantage, right? For example, the Environmental Protection Fund Advocacy Day, or the Adirondacks and Catskills Advocacy Day, the Rivers and Lakes Waters Day. Those are the types of things you should take advantage of. And the other things, you want to make sure you spread your message, find your champion, and connect with folks with central staff. So what does this look like, right? Connecting with other committee members. Here at Parks and Trails, we work a lot with the Parks Committee Chair. That's Senator Serrano. But he is not the make or break decider in every committee. So we need to know all of those legislators that are in that committee. We want to engage with them. We want to give them our pitch and talk about our priorities with them as well, so that we are a somewhat familiar name and topic. Circulating a letter through a champion, right? So we may meet with another committee member who really or our message or ask resonates with them. We could ask them to circulate a support letter with their colleagues on our behalf, just to continue to build more champions, folks that will ultimately spread your message and be there when the rubber meets the road to support the ask and support the movement of whatever issue you are looking to see extended. And you want to go the extra mile, and this is why I include central staff. Now, central staff is a phrase in Albany that talks about the aides, the council, the other folks that work behind the scenes to support the actual functions of the Assembly and the Senate. Those people who were kind of behind the scenes, way up on the upper floors of the Capitol, they are a lot of times the real experts, and they are absolutely should be aware of what your asks are and what you're looking to achieve. And I believe this is applicable at the county and local level too. Who are the folks that work in those offices that support the function and movement of work and policy and procedure, bills and proposed legislation, those types of things through those levels. Those are the folks you need to know. Those are the folks that you need to ingratiate yourselves with and ultimately convince. All right, so session is that busy time. Y'all are probably familiar with that. But then we get to following up and to spring, right? So it's important here to be responding to and continuing to engage with these offices. Here at PTNY, we respond to the state of the state. We respond to one-house budgets. We respond to the final budget, which will come out on Monday, hopefully. And these can be other responses, letters that you circulate to your members, to your own coalition, to your local community saying, hey, did you see town board member Smith did this either for or against what we're looking for? We need to spread the message. We need to build some momentum. We need to continue to demonstrate our presence. Those types of follow-ups. And then year-round, but specifically, again, kind of coming into this summer time frame, is the time to engage locally. So again, here at the state level, every legislator has a district office. Come June 15th, if we're going to engage a legislator, we're going directly to their district office. Those folks who are the office managers or maybe a chief of staff is based there, they are experts in the local community, in the constituency. They are good people to know and to inform about your goals before session comes around or we get into that November timeframe so that they can be educating the legislator or the decision maker or the elected, whomever that happens to be. So the most effective advocates are the ones who stay engaged between the budget cycles. They provide shine and good opportunities and positivity to the legislators. They're there to make that process look good and effective for ultimately that stakeholder or that decision maker. Make sure you know a first name, right? Be sure that they know you by a first name and that they know your issue or priority and don't always need to be reminded of it. So as we talked a little bit more, understanding the timeline, right? We just kind of want to put this out here as like a key infographic for you all. So May and June is the final budget here in New York State. That is going to be a time for you to continue to follow up, thank legislators or other folks that you've met with for their time and energy during session, and then to essentially reset yourself for the next cycle. Because again, Advocacy Day and session is sort of the end of this advocacy timeline. July through August, you're starting to outreach. This is an opportunity to talk with those local offices, district offices, and catch sort of people in the off season when they may have more time to actually engage with you on the issues more deeply, and we'll talk about that a bit. The fall, September and October, is meeting with legislators, again, pushing a little bit more specifically on an ask. If you've been meeting with just staff, this is the time of year to be sort of going all the way and asking for a meeting specifically with the elected official at all levels of government. That is the time to be doing that so that they're primed and ready going into either A, budget, or B, into session, your topics and your name is top of mind, or at least in the mix. Late summer and fall, these are when the budget proposals are going in. So if you have something that is tied to your local, county, state budget, this is the time to really be pushing on those elements, asking if they're being included, what you can do to ensure they are included in any budget asks, asking who else within your network that you've been meeting with can make a plug with the powers that be to ensure that it's made into the budget. If it's not there in the budget, the chances of it making it in for January are very slim, right? So this is where you're going to be particularly tenacious. And then again, as we get past November, December is essentially a wash. So you get that month off for the holidays. Then you get back into February and March, advocacy days, meeting with offices, coming to Albany or to your county offices, your local offices, and making those pushes. All right. So if you wait until the budget is out, you're already too late. All right. So I just want to make that clear and really hope you get that home. So step number one in this broad outline that we provided is getting the meeting. All right. How to start, right? This does not need to be complicated, and you do not need to give this sense of getting started any more power than it needs to have, because it does not take any special access, right? Ultimately, call or email your district office, right? And ask for the legislator or the staff member. Be flexible if you can, as much as you can, about any times that they offer to meet. If they can't meet in person and they offer you a Zoom, absolutely take it. If all you can get is a phone call with legislative aid, take it. It's really important that you at least get your foot in the door and have those opportunities to engage with as many of the staff members as is possible. We had up here at the top about emailing or calling your district office that you catch more flies with honey and details, and that is absolutely true. So something I'll mention later and I'll plug right now is it's really important to keep notes on all of your engagements. Who did you talk to? What was their title? A phone number, an email? How long did you talk? What did you talk about? How did they respond? Were they picking up what you were putting down, right? An anecdote is there is the outgoing chair of the Environmental Conservation Committee in the Assembly. It was a tricky office. She was very busy, and so it was really difficult to get meetings with her and her staff. But her scheduler, Louise, was the person that ultimately you needed to know and ingratiate yourself with to get to that next level. So knowing her, how she worked, I started to realize when she was answering emails and when she might answer a phone call. That's when I would send those emails and make those calls. Being personable and really being genuine whenever I engaged with her was a key to success in terms of breaking down the door to that legislator and that decision maker. So those are important details. Folks might see that as sort of duplicitous. I disagree. If you're genuine, it comes across. You want to know them, you want to know what makes them tick, you want to know how they work, and you want to make your request and your ask as easy for them to accommodate as is possible. The other thing about getting a meeting is legislators expect to hear from you. That is the bulk of their job, right? It's listening to constituents and people from their community. So with advocacy, being a nag is the goal. Obviously, you keep it positive, you keep it constructive, but yes, nagging, constantly pushing, responding, emailing, providing those updates. And we'll talk about some of those other tools here in a couple of minutes. But be a nag, that is not a bad thing. Regular cadence is essential. If you're not there pushing your goals and your priorities, other groups, other people, other nonprofits are filling that space, absolutely. And it could be something counter to your goal. So make sure you're showing up, making the calls, being in their ear, and catching those flies with honey. So when it comes to the actual meeting itself, there's a good deal of preparation that should go into your meeting, especially those first few meetings before you've established a bit of a rapport. First and foremost is you want to prepare that your ask is incredibly clear and simple. All right. Know your site, know your project, know your outcome, and identify your ask. For any of you that have ever done development work or fundraising, you know it all boils down to that one sentence ask. Will you support our organization with X? It's the same with a legislator or their office and staff. You have to ultimately provide a bit of a context to some of a narrative clearly and concisely, and then make sure you hit them with that one sentence ask. Will you support this? Will you prevent this housing development from going up, adjacent to our preserve, whatever it has to be? You have to make sure that you include that. Don't be scared of the ask. It's part of the game that needs to be played. What should you bring with you? 1, 2, 3 key facts that support your ask. Don't overload them with a ton of information. It actually will just make them glaze over a little bit. And I've also been in situations with other advocacy groups on different coalition days where you can see the staff simply like glaze over. You've lost them in the minutia of all the detail you're providing. So I stand by keeping it to a couple of key facts. Make sure there is a local connection, right? What does it mean for the district, for their community, for the bottom line? And it's always good to have a letter of support. Other partners that are willing to sign on and support you. A coalition is a great way to engage the legislator and their staff and the community more broadly and demonstrate that you're bringing that value to your ask and ultimately to the legislator. Again, I want to just reiterate, don't overload with data. Don't try to cover everything. Really, clarity beats complexity every single time, hands down. Sharing a plan, a vision with some action steps is great. Don't be overly prescriptive. Don't come across too rigid as like, this is the vision, this is the only way it can be, right? If we're talking about government, I'm sure you can all think about some sort of anecdote personally that is antithetical to that, right? Electeds need flexibility, and you have to be able to live comfortably in that flexible space. It's about being a good partner for them. And do a debrief. Absolutely. This comes down to taking notes. This comes down to recording who you met with, about what, and by that messaging, right? Did the message land? We talk about parks all the time. I've joked with some of you at Advocacy Day. The good news is I've never gone to a meeting and someone says, I don't like parks. All right. The bad news is most people like parks. So you have to figure out a way to take that and convey and turn your need into something that really resonates with them, right? What's that messaging? Is it economic resiliency? Is it livability? Is it environmental protection? Those are things that you should try out. And if you make a pitch the first time about livability in your community as it relates to your goals and it doesn't land, that's okay, right? You record that through your debrief. The next time you meet with them or you talk with whomever, you switch up the messaging and you keep trying those messages until you find what works. That is okay. That will not be seen as you not knowing your content. It's essentially an art of how the game is played. So change tactics when you need to. And also I would say here too is, did you get follow-up questions? I feel like that's a great quality control moment. If you're not getting follow-up questions, you might want to reconsider how you're approaching it. And it's also very good to say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that question. Let me do some research and get back to you. Let me connect with some of our coalition members and provide you some more information. That is a great way to say that you are a partner, and it's a great way to create another touch point with these elected officials or decision makers. And it's all part of this process of being the NAG. So when it comes to the actual meeting itself, there are some nuances, right? You absolutely should do as much research as you can ahead of the meeting, right? Who is this elected official? What makes them tick, right? Having something that is a personal anecdote that connects to them, a connection, something that makes it personal is really important. Trying to understand their personal priorities might help you figure out how to frame the message and the ask. And you can find that information on their official legislative website, right? If you could, for example, in New York State legislature, the Assembly or the Senate, they typically have like a welcome letter, a little bit about them, some of their bio. That just might be some initial intel that you can use to your advantage. Maybe it gives you a little bit of sense of like, you know, the specific policies. You can also then take it a bit further, might tell you where they went to school or who their spouse is or activities their kids love and that they've, you know, done and supported. Maybe you have a similar life experience that you can help to, again, build that rapport with. The meeting structure itself, again, should be pretty clear and direct, right? You want to make sure you're explaining who you are, what your organization is about, right? You want to provide some facts. You want to make that clear ask. But you really, again, want to make sure that you're explaining why this matters to them. Why should they care? Why does it matter to their constituents? How will it give them some shine that will make their re-election bid that much more successful? That can seem to some folks as sort of transactional. And I can certainly understand that, but I would encourage you to not think of it that way. I would think of it again as the phrase I've been saying is how the game is played. Whether we love that system or not, it is the system as it exists, and so you'll have to continue to sort of leverage that to your own benefit, right? So again, what does it mean for them, their constituents? What does it mean for them personally? What does it mean for their own professional trajectory, right? This is going to make you look good because X, Y, and Z. Of course, you want to have the ask itself. You want to give them an invitation to engage, right? And what does that mean? Maybe it's an aspirational pitch. You're painting a picture. Here's what this park could look like if you could do X, Y, and Z. Here's how many more kids could access the outdoors, and have this great experience if we could do this here. You all will know what the goal is, but it's okay to make it a bit of, you know, a bit of a picture, a bit of a narrative. And that's when you sprinkle in those 2, 3 key facts, data points that help hit the message home. So it isn't as data content heavy, it is a bit more of a narrative. That's my personal perspective. And again, that's just me speaking broadly based on my experience so far. Some legislators may say, I don't care about the fluff, just give me the numbers, right? In which case you have to be prepared to pivot or to record this engagement and be able to respond in turn at the next time you engage. But generally speaking, I feel like this is a pretty effective approach. And of course, you want to focus on the connectivity, right? What does this mean for the community? How does this connect to the funding or the policy changes that you're requesting? And we're, you're not just asking for funding, right? You're showing what's possible. So of course, make an allusion to, again, of course, how this benefits them, their office, their constituency, their shine. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about turning legislators into champions. This is kind of like the ultimate goal, right? Is to have in our case, a Senator Serrano with some gravitas who can really champion PTNY and sort of keep an eye out for us and our asks as it relates to the budget and policy. First things first is go beyond the meeting. Yes, phone calls, emails, visits at Albany, visits at district offices, visits in your town hall, whatever that happens to be, but get them out to the site. Come to an event, come to an I Love My Park day, come to a cleanup, come to a barn painting, a rail trail cleanup, whatever those things happen to be. Have them physically come out and give them the opportunity to feel a connection with the place that you're championing. Also, really make it easy for them. Have a clear purpose. Depending on the event, have some simple visuals, have a simple handout, something that they can take with them for their engagement. Those are all simple pieces. Again, this should not be your 25-page report about what happens if you build a rail trail. This is maybe a 2-page executive summary with some great pictures, a couple of infographics, some facts, a list of your partners, and your ask in bold, in red, clearly identifying you and how to find you or your organization. Real people and real stories also make this difference, right? So if I am hosting an event in my town park and I invite my assembly member to come, I want to show them why we need to invest in this community pavilion. But I also want to stack the cards in my favor. I want to have a quick meet and greet with a couple of different folks from different demographic backgrounds or key constituency backgrounds, if you will, that can help to sell that. You want to make it feel a bit organic, but also it shouldn't be off-putting to you, and it can feel a little bit jarring to set that up, but it is what is expected. It's how the game is played to a degree, and so you should lean into that. Have a couple people really there sort of organically to support your ask. And then also, certainly roll out the red carpet. Treat them a bit like a VIP because they are. Are legislators and elected officials just regular people? Yes, of course. But there's a bit of pomp and circumstance that comes with that, and it's okay to lean into that and try to have some fun with it. Maybe you have a specific handler that can engage with them and kind of show them around. Maybe they're also willing to kind of make that secondary pitch for you. And also, I think I want to put this here is you want to be respectful of their time. Their time is very precious. You all probably know some legislators or elected officials, and they're kind of from one event to the next, to the next, to the next. If you only got 10 minutes at a site, that is great, right? Don't see that as a negative, only 10 minutes, right? Now, this is fantastic. You got 10 minutes of FaceTime on your site to physically see what we're talking about. That's great. The more time you get, the better, but that's okay if it feels short and sort of truncated. Remember, people care about, they fight for, they fund the things they care about. They fight about for what they've seen and what they feel connected to. And it's not very dissimilar from many of you who are Friends Group members or Friends Group leaders. You're passionate about the place that you champion. Fuel that passion, let it come across genuinely, give them a little taste of that, try to bring them on board, and that's how you can use those opportunities to make a champion out of a legislator. I want to talk about bringing them to your site, right? The site visit matters because it builds an understanding and a connection and makes the ask tangible. It is difficult to get them there, but this is why you try to engage local offices in that off season, right? Off season, July and August in particular, and also a bit of September. But it makes the ask tangible, right? And so I think this is a great way. If you can coordinate it and you can make the stars align, it might take a couple of tries. Don't be discouraged. It's kind of it's not the holy grail, but it is certainly a holy relic, if you will. Some tips for a successful visit: keep it organized, keep it simple, keep it mindful, be about the amount of time that you have or the amount of time that they have. And you want to keep it aspirational. Sell the vision, sell the passion, and ultimately be as enthusiastic as is possible without making it seem false or phony. And showcase what it is that we're talking about. Show them the need, show them the opportunity, introduce them to the right people as well, depending on your ask and what your goal is, right? I'm just thinking again with our Friends Network and the Friends Coalition, connecting with the park manager, the site manager, if they're willing to support your ask and they're on board. Maybe it's a regional staff member, a local leader, other electeds, right? If you have your state senator coming in to look at how your park historic site, right, needs a new roof, and having the local mayor there saying, this is a great asset for our community, thousands of people are coming here, and we need this to be remedied, that's a great connection to ultimately be made. Sort of like working across different levels of government. Those are just some examples, but you want to demonstrate the support that you've already garnered. You want to give them the sense that you have thought this through and that you're prepared. Let's just talk briefly about making the ask. As I said before, we are asking for insert your goal, right? Clear, direct, simple, simply stated. What we're asking for. Generally, suggestions are better than overly detailed prescriptions, which I've mentioned. Know your options, right? Where do you see this coming together? How do you see it coming to fruition? Is it through a budget? Is it through, say, for example, the state legislature? Is it a SAM grant, right? These used to be called member items or earmarks. That's a bad word now. We call them SAM grants. Is this something that you want to talk with them about potentially allocating some of their own funding for? Is this a policy change, right? And they can help to give you some sense of what those next steps are. And are you asking them to be an advocate and join your cause, right? At the end of every meeting that I have, I try to say, here's my ask, will you support it? Yes, great. What are our next steps? You won't support it, what's holding you back? Oh, you need to talk with your actual legislator? Great, here's what I'm gonna follow up and talk more about that and try to secure that support. Those are important things to do. It can be awkward, but don't shy away from it. Of course, continue to tie to the community impact that it'll have, the accessibility, the economic benefit, the livability, whatever speaks to them based on what you know about them or what you've heard about them from their staff, their chief of staff, their communications director. Are they a birder? Do they love youth sports? Are they an avid trail runner and you have trail groups running through your park or site? These are small things that might seem anecdotal, but again, it helps to ground the ask in a reality that speaks to them. And again, of course, don't be intimidated. It's okay to ask. It's why you're there. It's what they are expecting from you. I'd suggest that to a degree, not making a specific ask while you have the opportunity actually undermines you more than simply getting a no. Right? There's some nuance to this, but you can kind of work with a no, right? You can come back and try another tactic, another message, a different pitch. work with other coalition members, right? There's ways to sort of figure out turning a no into a yes, but ultimately be seen as someone who doesn't really ultimately know what they want, I think hurts you more. And so don't be intimidated, just go for it. Follow-up is key. This is critical. It's where the advocacy happens, right? So after your meeting, you want to send an email within 24 to 48 hours. It's kind of a critical window, especially during legislative season or in the build up to the season. You want to thank them. You want to restate your ask very clearly, and you want to share some materials along with that follow-up. This should be thoughtful and selective. Don't spam them with a ton of information all at once. It actually undermines you, I think. You have to imagine the number of emails, correspondence, resources, research, papers, etc., that are coming across these desks every day, especially for some of these interns who are rather young. Keeping something clear and concise and targeted is very helpful. If they ask questions, be sure to answer them as clearly and succinctly as you can. Again, questions and skepticism are great. It gives you a reason to continue to be persistent and to be informing them and for you to stay informed. So again, recording the correspondence and what you shared, what's landing, what gets responses, what doesn't is important. And stay in touch. Invites, updates, photos, on e-news, adding them on social media or things like that. Those are important. And you don't want to spam them, but if you have a quarterly e-news, it would be great if you direct it to their general inbox. It can't hurt. At a minimum, one of their staff members is seeing that email, and then when you make the call to set up a meeting, they recognize the name. And I also just wanted to mention here, please don't discount support staff. They are advocates on the inside for you. And that is really helpful. Again, many legislators are informed and they're knowledgeable and they're reading quite a bit. But as you can imagine, it's impossible to read and be knowledgeable about everything that they're receiving. And so rely on their staff to be an advocate for you. And an example of this is, I've mentioned Senator Serrano, who's pictured here. We work with him quite a bit. His chief of staff, Katie, is fantastic. It took me a couple of years to really develop a relationship with her. But knowing that she is someone that the senator relies on for information makes her my greatest asset and ally. So I want to make sure I'm engaging with her regularly. I know about her personal life. I ask those questions. We keep it cordial. And then I get to my ask. We do the updates. I make myself available and we move on. That is incredibly helpful for someone like her. I also work a good bit with Senator Kruger, who is the chair of Finance, the Ways and Means, which is obviously incredibly powerful and important committee here at the legislature. Knowing her legislative director, Josh, is very helpful for me. He knows where we're going to land. He knows to call me if there's an issue, and that develops that relationship. So when it comes to certain environmental policies and public land pieces, the senator is going to Josh. Josh has my information or knows how to get a hold of me. All right, so old-fashioned mail and phone calls are still effective. All right, there's always this sense like it has to be in person. Yeah, that's ideal. A site visit's even better. It's not realistic all the time. A phone call or an old-fashioned piece of mail is something that staff have to open up and address, right? So it's a relic of a time gone by that still really works. So send them the emails, send them the e-news, a physical copy, a letter with some pictures of a recent event that happened that again supports your ask is still good. And a reminder here, just like the meeting is not the end, it just might be the beginning. So bringing it all together as we kind of wrap up here and move to a Q&A is sort of like your advocacy checklist, right? Meet with your legislators in summer and fall. Do those touch points before you get to the middle of November. Always make sure you have your clear ask lined up and ready to go, that it's consistent across the board with whoever you're talking with. You'll want to do those follow-ups 24 to 48 hours afterwards. If a question was asked, you want to answer it. If it was, even if you provided an answer at that meeting, provide it again. Invite them to your site, get them to come to your event, whatever that happens to be. And again, stay engaged year round, track your progress, track your engagement, and be self-reflective about what's working and what's not, who is being responsive to you and who isn't, and pivot and be nimble as much as you can that stays true to your ask. So that is our, generally speaking, our checklist. Final reminders. You can do it. You are the experts in your community, at your park, your site, your greenway, your public land. And so lean into that, be confident about it, use your voice, and develop those relationships because they're really what drive results. People want to support the other people and places that they feel strongly connected to, as I'm sure many of you can relate. The most effective advocates aren't necessarily the loudest, sometimes that helps, but the most effective advocates are consistent, a consistent messaging, a consistent cadence of engagement, and that is really important for you all to just kind of own as the advocacy process unfolds. Remember, as I said at the top, it's a marathon, and there will be ups and downs during that time, but stick with it. It does get better, and results obviously do happen. And the last thing I'll say here is don't forget about PTNY. Shayna and I, Dylan, the rest of our team, we're happy to support you. We might have intel, we might have some resources or connections. We can help set up a meeting. We have online letter sign-on and campaign tools that we can make available to you. So if there's ever a legislator or a district office that you want to engage with and you're just curious to know what we know so you're more informed, please reach out to us. We keep those records so that we can be obviously better advocates for ourselves, but also to help you all as our partners and coalition members. So those are our final reminders. But I think there's some time left. I want to turn it over to Shayna if we have any questions that we might want to try to address.
Yes, thank you so much, Will. We have about 10 minutes left. I think I put everyone on mute, so feel free to ask to unmute, and I can unmute you. I know that feels very elementary school of me, so I apologize, but I would be happy to unmute you if you want to ask your question out loud. There were two really great questions that came in through the chat, Will. So one is from Ryan, who asked, with it being an election year, would it be more prudent to meet with legislators and legislator-elects after Election Day when they would likely have more time? What are your thoughts on that?
My gut response to that is it's yes to both. I think it's important to engage with legislators before the election as much as they're able to. Obviously, if whoever you're speaking with, there's a chance that they lose and they're on their way out. But if they're on their way out, depending on the situation, they could provide you with more connections. They might feel like they have less to lose. They can give you some more intel that maybe they would be hesitant to before. If they win, I use this phrase very generally, but maybe they're coming in on a mandate. They feel like they have more time to push passion projects early before they feel like they have to fight for a re-election and be more tied to a specific party line or a specific community request, right? So just something to consider. I would say advocacy and constant engagement, regardless of when the election cycle is beneficial, especially if you're also working with legislative staff. Because staffers stick around and they hop from one office to another. So you never know who might end up in a key position one day is particularly helpful.
Thank you. And the second question I see in here is from Lori at Walkway Over the Hudson. How do you handle escalation of an issue? They've had some contentiousness with a local town supervisor and are hitting a dead end in the conversation. Do you have any advice on bringing in other local electeds to help influence the issue?
Sorry, Shane, did you say these are they're legislators or they're executive?
Local town supervisor.
Okay. I mean, my gut here is that you really have to do sort of your back end digging to see who actually has the supervisors here. Inevitably, there's someone that is giving them some suggestion, some direction, is of some sort of counsel. Ultimately, right, you have to figure out who those people are and convince them, right? I don't know how many people are like, TV nerds, right? But you think of something like the Game of Thrones, right? There are those sort of the spies who are sort of working in the background. Everyone has counsel. Figuring out who is counseling whom is really critical. We're doing that right now with some of our work around our greenways, making an ask for some significant funding in the budget. I can't really get to the governor and her team on this issue, but I know through the grapevine that there are a few legislators that she tends to reach out to on particular issues. So now I'm working on those legislators so that if and when the time comes, they're ready to speak positively about the ask, and or they could preemptively reach out and say, hey, I heard about this thing. This seems like a great idea. Have you considered it? It might fit into your plan. I feel like when you come up to like an executive in particular that is adamant about opposing something, it's because they have a grander design in mind, something else that they're really trying to advance. And so knowing that as well can be helpful for you in feeling where there's either chinks in the armor or um, another way to sort of make it worth their while.
I think just to add to that to Will on this specific question, Lori, if you know of other local electeds, I think using those events you have coming up and just extending an invite to folks beyond that direct supervisor, also extend that invite to them. But if there are other folks that are key decision makers in the area and you have an event coming up and you can at least grab their ear, invite them to the site so it doesn't feel like you're just setting up a meeting and kind of going around anyone. You can also just bring them all to the site and connect with them in that way and show them and help them care about it. Like Will said, kind of fueling that passion, at least getting what you're asking for in front of other folks, and maybe those conversations at that next level can meet. I think that's one way to start bridging that gap too. Hopefully that is helpful. Those were the only two questions that actually came through the chat. Does anyone else have a question?
I see Kathleen has a hand.
Kathleen, all right, here, I'm going to ask you to unmute. There you
Thank you. I couldn't figure out how to do that. Yeah, not so much questions. A couple things that have worked really well for us. When we first started meeting with our county legislator, his chief of staff said, always have a small, medium, and large ask. And it needs to be in their folder so that when money becomes available, they're not having to reach out to you. They have it and they're like, oh, well, that's, and that has worked very well for us. And we've learned that sometimes the best help you can get is not monetary. We had Governor Hochul's office here last year and showed Bonnie Kane Lockwood her chief of staff around and had a really good conversation. And at the very end, mentioned that we were having some legal problems with the company that was that we were working with in our fundraising. Our software. And we were down $135,000, and she got the Attorney General's office involved, and it solved the problem. So that's that relationship part, right? And so some that marathon sometimes also just involves creating the relationship so that you have somebody to ask for help when you need it. So.
Kathleen, I love the small, medium, big, large ask. That's great. That's great. I'm gonna steal that, and I will give credit.
Wrote it down
for a little while.
Awesome.
Here, I see a question in here from Rachel. So Rachel's on a volunteer board in her town and regarding tree conservation. How can we have an effective upcoming meeting with our town supervisor? How many answers do we need to have prepared?
I mean, Rachel, if you have a sense of like what the questions are going to be, like what the pushback is going to be, my sense would be, to have one or two thoughtful responses to the questions. I don't think you need to go in armed to the teeth with every possible defense, every metric, every number that gets to countering whatever those questions are. If you don't know what the questions are going to be, you just kind of feel like it will be adversarial, I think that that's okay. My sense is go into it, with this feeling like you're going to go high if other people go low, right? And you're just going to kind of rise above, take it on the chin, and completely be unfazed by the pushback. And then that gives you all the ammunition ultimately you need to provide consistent, regular, thoughtful responses to whatever those questions are. Because it does need to sort of be a nag ultimately, and continue to demonstrate the positive outcomes that are coming from your ask and what ultimately can be achieved, right? You're kind of wearing them down in a way, and wearing them down so that your ask ultimately feels more of an imperative than other people's asks. And so hopefully that answers your question, but if you know them in advance, definitely go prepared, but don't oversaturate and bombard. If you don't know what those questions are going to be yet, that's a great opportunity for you to use it to your advantage.
Great.
First.
2 minutes left. I think the last plug I want to make, and then I'll let you close us off.
Please.
But there's a lot of friends groups in the room. I see some Trail Town representatives as well. Keep in mind the grant program presents a lot of great opportunities to engage your local legislators and key decision makers on all levels for your site. So if that be that the Park and Trail Partnership grants or our Western New York Trail Town grants, these projects are amazing. They're appealing to legislators, and you can help get them in on the ground floor, make them feel part of that process, and you have a natural built-in relationship builder tool right there. I really encourage you all to use PTPG to your advantage in that way. This is a great picture we have on the screen here at Mills at Statsburg and their completed kitchen renovation project that we funded in a recent round. So great opportunities to engage legislators there.
And to Shana's point, right? That's a great way that PTNY can help you. We can help you engage the legislator. We can promote your event. We can encourage someone to attend. They're familiar with this grant. They're familiar with the Environmental Protection Fund or some of the other grants that, and funding pots that we advocate for. And so to show them an actual example of what that meant for them and their community only engenders more support in the future. And so to use every tool in your tool belt. Can't hurt. But I think we're at the hour. I appreciate all of you who are here to take in the webinar. I know Shane and I are really excited to kind of push this concept a little bit further and try to empower, sort of our partners and members and coalition members to feel more confident as advocates, because the more we can work on all of our elected officials and stakeholders, the better off we all are. But if you have any additional questions, a specific thought, feedback, whatever it happens to be, please reach out to us. That's what we're here to do, is to work with you all. And good luck. Enjoy the rest of the spring. Get some sunshine. And we'll see you post-budget. All right. Bye. Thanks, y'all.